Welcome to Skincare Specialist 101. I'm Janine, your host for this series. Skin Science, Anatomy, and Physiology. In this lesson, it's time to learn about the science, the basic structure of your skin. I should tell you, by the way, this is one of my favorites. So let's get started. Skin Physiology 101. Your skin has three major functions: protection, regulation, and sensation. So protection, what is that? It is literally a protective shield for your body. It's going to protect your internal organs, and it's also going to act as a barrier against the environment. Regulation, it does exactly what it sounds like. It regulates your body's temperature. And the third major function of your skin is sensation, things like detecting temperature, touch, pain, pressure. So now let's take a closer look up at the skin's makeup. Okay, so we have the epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis. Before I jump into those, I have to ask you a question. Do you see sushi or do you see cake? So it's a real question because everyone sees things differently. I personally see sushi, but a lot of people see cake. So I'm going to use cake as an example. Like your skin, a cake is made up of layers. So let's just say that you bake a cake and you're going to bake 2 layers, and you're obviously going to have your icing on top. So the bottom layer of your cake, the bottom layer needs to be really strong. It needs to be sound. It needs to be well made, right? To really support the middle layer, which then in turn supports the icing. If either the bottom layer or the center layer, if anything happens to those, if they buckle, if they crumble, if they crack, I bet you know what happens. What happens to that icing? The icing on top, it starts to crack and fold in as well. So the icing is what I like to think about as the equivalent of the skin that you show to the world, which is your epidermis. So, it's how we judge whether or not a cake looks good. And it's also how, in terms of our skin, how we show whether we're young, we're old, we're sun worshipers, if we've definitely avoided the sun, smokers, non-smokers, you get it, right? It's the window that shows how we're taking care of our skin. So now that I've appropriately frightened you, I'm just kidding. Let's review the 3 basic layers of skin: epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis. First up, epidermis. The epidermis is the top most outer layer of your skin. This is where all of your visible signs of aging are going to appear. Your epidermis actually has 4 layers. Now, we're not going to go into all of those 4 layers, but I always think it's important to let you know there's multiple layers in your skin. So the epidermis also is made up of millions of skin cells that are held together by lipids. That's a fancy word for fat. And these really create a resilient barrier, and it's also going to regulate the amount of water that is released from your body, otherwise known as sweat. It's also, by the way, your epidermis, the thinnest layer. And I'm going to tell you, it's so thin, your epidermis, think it's thin as a single piece of paper. But it's also incredibly strong because it acts as a double barrier against external aggressors and loss of internal substances. So now with your dermis, the dermis is the middle layer, right? So now we're into the cake. So it's comprised of 2 layers. It also produces collagen and elastin. Those are fibrous proteins that are really important for elasticity and firmness. We're going to talk a lot more about those in just a couple of moments. It also, your dermis have nerve endings. So this is where all of the nerve endings live. And this is what helps you to feel things. So those nerve endings, they're what send those signals to your brain so that you know if something hurts, if it's itchy, if it feels great when you touch it. So isn't that interesting that all of those nerve endings are actually in the second layer of your skin, in the dermis? And here's another really cool fact that I always like to kind of point out. It's also where the roots of every single hair that lives on your skin lives. So each root attaches to a tiny little muscle, right? And by the way, that tiny little muscle, when it tightens, that's what actually gives you goosebumps. Did you know that? How cool. So when you're cold or you get scared and you get goosebumps, it's a teeny tiny little muscle that's actually contracting, and that's actually pulling on the root, and that's actually what makes up goosebumps. Okay, the hypodermis. The hypodermis is the last layer. It's a single layer. It actually contains all of your blood vessels, your nerves. It also has a subcutaneous fat layer. Now, this is the one time that I say on your body, you really want to have that fatty layer. It's really important because it actually stores fat as energy and it protects your body against external stimulation. But it also acts as an insulator. It actually helps to hold in the heat when you really need it. And it really is the regulator that keeps your body temperature very stable. This is important to note as well, that areas like around your eyes, on your neck, the reason that those typically begin to mature or we see those signs of aging first is because your hypodermis, that's where it's less scarce, even in your hand. So when you think about it, it kind of makes sense, right? So that fatty layer is really important in terms of really helping to keep your skin healthy. So let's do a quick review because I don't expect you to remember all of that. But if you had to remember one thing about the 3 basic layers of skin, let's start with the epidermis. Epidermis, it's where visible signs of aging appear. Your dermis, this produces collagen and elastin. This is really important to have beautiful skin, which again, we're going to talk about in just a moment. And your hypodermis, this is the fatty layer, and really important because this layer is really going to help keep your body's temperature stabilized. And where is the hypodermis kind of scarce? Places like your eyes, your neck, your hands. Now let's just take a little pause. I thought this would be fun to kind of do a little bit of a did you know? So I want you to grab a piece of paper and a pen, and I want you to write down what you think the answers are, and then we're going to see how you did on the next slide. So 1 inch of skin contains how many blood vessels do you think? How about how many hairs? Oil glands, sweat glands, and cells. And again, I want you to think about this. This is only 1 inch of skin. Okay, I'm going to give you a moment and we'll move right on. Okay, are you ready for the answers? 1 inch of skin contains 20 blood vessels. Okay, that might be, right in line with what you thought. 65 hairs. Wow, that's a lot of hairs for 1 inch. 95 to 100 oil glands. And some of us are like, wow, wondering why I'm oily, right? 650 sweat glands. And if that wasn't enough, 1 inch of skin contains just under 20,000 cells. Wow, right? 1 inch of skin. That is so incredible. I always just think those fun little facts are a lot of fun to share. Now, before we close this segment, I would be remiss if we did not talk about collagen and elastin. You can't see them, but wow, can you tell how well they are working? Things like fine lines, wrinkles, loss of elasticity, those are key signs of really what's going on beneath the surface. Remember the whole cake piece? Really important. So let's take a closer look at what collagen and elastin are. Okay, first up, collagen. Collagen is the science behind it. It's a protein. It's found in skin. Remember, it's in your dermis. And it's really important because collagen is all about strength and support. And the breakdown of collagen, that's one of the primary factors in aging. So it's going to be really important to cover off on collagen and elastin. So when your collagen is strong, think when you're younger. By the way, just to insert, you start to lose collagen in your mid-20s. So all of the products that are like, hey, we're going to help you with collagen, it's never too early to start using those products. So when your skin is younger, it's stronger, right? It obviously has fewer wrinkles. And that's because the collagen is very strong and it's standing up and it's really helping your skin to retain its shape as well as its height. And as you naturally start to age, it breaks down, which sadly enough, but it's true, happens to everyone, by the way, it leads to wrinkles and sagging skin. So the healthier that your collagen is, the smoother and the more line-free your visible skin is going to be. So everyday elements break down collagen. So remember when we talked about all of the factors that have, kind of contribute to your skin maturing, aging, things like stress, dehydration, pollution, sun exposure. So the list really goes on. Now, I want to pause for a moment because I always like to give examples. Another way to think about collagen is I want you to think collagen, it's kind of like the frame of a house. So, when a home is first built, it's strong, it's well built. That house is going to stand tall and it's going to retain its shape and height over many, many decades. But when the frame of a house isn't maintained, what happens? It kind of starts to crumble and break down. So, and you can see how it affects the rest of the house. The roof may start to buckle, the windows may tilt, and what you once thought was a really beautiful house, it kind of starts to sag and break down. Have you ever driven by a really beautiful home that you just know it was so beautiful back in the day, but because it hasn't been really taken care of, you can see where things have kind of started to fall down? That's a great way to think about your collagen. So collagen, think about it like the frame of a house. Now let's talk about elastin. So elastin, it's also a protein, and it does help your skin keep very flexible and tight. So its whole, reason for being is really to help your skin go back and retain its shape after stretching. So if you pinch or you contract, so a great way to tell how your elastin is doing is take your hand and do a little pinch of the skin on your hand. And if the skin goes right back, your elastin is probably great. But if the pinch takes a little bit longer to go back than you think, it means you may have a little bit of breakdown in your elastin. That's not a bad thing. There are products that we have that can absolutely help. Now, when your elastin in your skin is damaged, the skin starts to lose that natural shape. And I kind of like to call that the bounce back. And that is actually what helps with this sagging, right? In terms of losing that firmness. Now, lots of things, just like before with collagen, can really cause your skin to mature. So that pollution, the sun exposure, smoking, dehydration, the list really, again, goes on. So taking a step back, remember when we just talked about the collagen? So collagen is kind of like the frame of a house. And so the collagen is going to stand up strong, right? And really keep everything, very strong and ready to go. Elastin, the way I like to describe that is elastin is kind of like, it's like the filler in your house, right? It's kind of like, that protective layer. So it's really what's going to keep things very full and kind of, keeping them very youthful looking. Now, important to note that elastin and collagen actually work together. So another example I like to think about when I'm talking about collagen and elastin is think about your favorite t-shirt. So collagen and elastin, and you can even see right there on screen, they're kind of woven together like a fabric, right? And that's your elastin, your collagen fibers. And think about when you first bought that t-shirt. You know how the t-shirt, it was super crisp, it was tight. You were like, yes, I can wear this, with my jeans or my, top, and I can go out and I can look really great. And over time, the more that you wear that t-shirt, what starts to happen? It starts to thin out in places. It starts to break down. The threads start to loosen and unravel, right? And the same thing, that example can be used for your skin. When it's your skin, collagen and elastin are woven like threads in a t-shirt. And over time, and as well as being exposed to damage, they actually can break down. And that is what actually causes things on your epidermis, wrinkles, kind of depressions, things like that to be seen in your skin. Okay, so I know you may be thinking, wow, thanks for the uplifting segment, Janine, but It's really important to understand the basic makeup and structure of your skin. When you understand why things happen, it's going to give you the confidence to really help your customers even more. I always like to say that knowledge is power. And in turn, you become the expert that your customers seek out for advice. And by the way, they're very likely to send others to you for help as well. Now that you understand the basic skin science of anatomy and physiology, it's time to go to the next lesson, all about skin types.